This is Chapter 3 of the rehash of the United Soccer Coaches Convention session on benefits of sand for grass players and a discussion of the U.S. Beach Soccer National Championship. This is Chapter 3, Intro to Why Players Train in Sand, a continuation. Now, we've already talked about a few of the items, but injury and rehabilitation and prevention are key components here. Being in Chicago, I'm actually really excited to bring this next part up because you have a perfect specimen in regards to the sweetness, as he was known. Walter Payton, from the moment that he was drafted as a Chicago Bear, didn't miss a single game ever. He never missed a game. Now, it's known clearly through different articles and investigations that he has stated that his durability was basically based on the fact that every summer he trained on the sand dunes on the Mississippi River. So Walter Payton, who never missed a game as a running back for the Chicago Bears, winning Super Bowls, getting championships in rushing yards, and basically being known as the most efficient running back of his time, trained in sand. Now, whereas Gareth Bale is another player that we know that trains in sand, from a standpoint of me being a Real Madrid fan, I think he spends more time in the sand than he does actually on the field these days. But the reality is that the soft surface is helping cushion the impact of limbs and joints so players are able to get back and from injury quicker, and they're having less damage to their bodies by this low impact, which has basically been key to injury rehabilitation. Now, adding a variety of these different training surfaces and everything has less an impact on the body, which means the body, feels less stress and there's lower risk for overuse of muscles. Granted, I'm reading right off this chart here, but these are the things that make it so efficient to be in the sand. You're literally putting less stress on the body, and let's compare that to whether it's grass or futsal, and you're doing it in a way that you're also building a bunch of muscles that you wouldn't do otherwise and getting skills that you wouldn't get otherwise. So it's interesting that places like Chelsea, like here, John Terry, working on getting himself fit, working on getting himself back from injury, or another, Gareth Bale, who, this has been tracked very closely because he's had such injury problems. He's working with, Real Madrid trainers to get himself there all the time, working in the sand, working at, building out these muscles, getting his explosiveness back. We haven't seen him slow down. He just has bad hamstrings and bad growings or whatever it is that's keeping him there. But let's just think about this. He also hit a bike kick, a Welshman hitting a bike kick. Where do you think he got that skill? Barcelona. This was taken in December, right before doing this session, taken obviously from Barcelona TV, where it's showing that Luis Suarez is working on getting himself back from injury, working out in the sand. You've seen the photo earlier of Iniesta doing the same. Barcelona, an elite club. Real Madrid, an elite club. And, obviously you're looking at a situation where the working on these unstable surfaces are engaging muscles that you would not engage by being on just a strictly hard surface. It's building out more muscle mass for you. It's recruiting, like we've said over and over again, different types of muscles, so that basically you're strengthening areas around muscles that aren't normally used. You're taking advantage of the fact that it's forcing you to have better balance and better coordination, as well as speed. Now, some will say that it actually slows you down. There's videos on YouTube now saying, oh, training in sand is going to slow you down because you take more steps over a shorter amount of time, called cadence, and you basically don't really, get faster. But as a soccer coach, if we're thinking about, especially when a player turns, that we want them to take shorter steps coming out of that turn and then extend out into a longer stride. It is a scenario where it doesn't necessarily make you slower. In fact, there's actually absolutely zero evidence showing that it slows you down. Nothing has been tracked showing that, whereas the contrary has been tracked. In Pellizzeri, did a session with English Premier players. There was 18 players that trained on turf and 19 players that did sand. They did 4 weeks of plyometrics, including jumping and sprinting, and what he came out of in there looked at the fact that players over the 10-meter run and over the 20-meter run, as well as standing jumping, all increased tremendously with the sand players compared to those that were just training on regular turf. In addition to that, it showed that those training on the turf actually had more muscle pain than those that trained on the sand. In addition to that, Miyakama and Osaka in 2004 compared the recovery response following 100 consecutive drop jumps on the sand versus a firm wood surface. Obviously, the impact was much better for those that were jumping into the sand. From my own standpoint, I do want to express that there has to be a balance between sand and other hard turf surfaces. For myself, I had an injury. I was training in the sand for about 4 to 5 weeks, a couple times a week. My stamina was great. I went out and I went running on a mixed surface of trails and asphalt, and the next day I could barely walk. Now, 2 days before that, I did 10,000 steps, 5 miles in the sand, and walked away the next day without even having a sore muscle. Then I went out and ran 3 miles at a really high pace because I had, obviously, the stamina, and the muscles and the impact of the hard surface really affected me in a negative way. So whereas I'm explaining that all of these things are extremely beneficial by putting your players in the sand, there has to be a balance, as with anything. Now, from the standpoint of explosiveness, as I already mentioned, Impalazzeri's study showed that the 10, 20-meter sprints and were tremendously better, as well as the distance in a standing squat jump. We also have discussed Francesco Mori, although I didn't mention him by name earlier, from Bayern Munich, talking about how everything that they're doing in the sand is giving them a more elite player. And if we look at the fact that watching the German Bundesliga is like Groundhog Day, in the fact that Bayern Munich is the champion pretty much every year, they have to be doing something right. And the fact that their physical trainer is coming out and expressing this, it should bear witness to those that are naysayers. The best club in Germany, one of the best leagues in Europe, are excelling by reducing weight room time and gym time and putting their players in the sand. Now, Bayern, it's not like just some of the players are doing it. As you go through and you see them, you're seeing the explosiveness that they're doing. They're working on building their strength, and the fact that the surface is uneven, all of the muscles are being recruited, and it's putting them in a scenario whether they're doing their plyometrics or they're working on their speed, like here Ribéry, or all the other players that you can recognize if you know anything about professional football. They're all being taken to the next height of the level. But this isn't just with the elite soccer clubs of the world. You can find this even at universities now. There's a situation where Indiana University's basketball program is utilizing sand training in a way to be able to get their players at a higher and more elite level. So it's not just elite soccer clubs or football clubs of the world. Even in the United States, at the most advanced college, university level, you're finding trainers that are utilizing sand to build quickness and strength to make them one of the best and most fabled organizations in the country for basketball. There's a reason why this is being done, and too many coaches aren't looking at the facts and only not doing things for whatever the many reasons why people have said it.